President Xi visited Brazil last year. So this year, he let Chinese Premier Li Qiang attend the BRICS Summit. China has never been afraid of the U.S. tariff threat. On the contrary, it is the U.S. that is afraid of China and begs to negotiate with China. A lot of Western media, they demonize Xinjiang and describe a very black, very dirty, very terrible Xinjiang. I think that is all rumor. Tibet is our own issues. Don't intervene China's sovereignty. Tibet is naturally one part of China. Don't let the border conflict or the Dalai Lama issues influence our two smart and great countries.
So basically anything which is important for India, Professor, so basically anything which the Indians consider important should not be on the table for discussion. Would you say in that case, because you were saying until 2019, India-China relationship was on a recovery path. But 2019, the border conflict started, which was of course started by China. So would you say in that case, China is at fault? Some are saying China is perhaps being soft towards states which are terror sympathizers, and in this case specifically Pakistan. On one hand, you can't expect India to discuss just trade and not mention border conflict at all, and have all of this go on simultaneously. In geopolitics, somebody's absence could be more conspicuous than their presence, especially when it offers a big opportunity to your country's role as the leader of the global south. I'm of course talking about the 2025 BRICS Summit in Brazil, and conspicuous by absence, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, who decided to skip it. At least that's what we are being told. Now, as far as China is concerned, there is not much that trickles out in terms of information. And in the absence of verified information, speculations take over. So some said his adversaries are getting stronger, especially as the Chinese economy faces a slowdown. Others said his adversaries have got so strong that they prevented him from leaving. So why did not Xi Jinping attend the summit? Even Vladimir Putin, who couldn't attend, chose to address the summit through video conferencing. And to answer a few more important questions, the Chinese position on Dalai Lama's most recent statement regarding succession, I'm joined by Professor Wang Wen, Dean, Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies, and also the Dean of the School of Global Leadership. Thank you, Professor, for taking the time and joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, Professor, the thing which is, right at the top of my mind, and of course, a question which is being asked by many, is why President Xi Jinping decided to skip the 2025 BRICS Summit, because this was, of course, his chance to reinforce China's role as the leader of the global south. And because of his absence, all kinds of reports have been doing the rounds, including that he could be stepping down, including that he perhaps suffered a stroke at some point in time. And some are also saying that there are only two possibilities here, that either he could not afford to leave because of political turbulence at home front, or because his adversaries are strong enough to not allow him to leave. So what do you think happened? Why did not President Jinping attend the summit?
First of all, I think don't over speculate about President Xi's absence. I guarantee now in China, the social stability is very, very well. And most of Chinese people love President Xi. And the CPC government has very strong, very high support from the Chinese ordinary citizen. And I can share with you is that President Xi visited Brazil last year to attend the G20 summit. I think it's very normal that he hasn't go to Brazil this year again. I think this is by no meaning because of the other reasons. Some people think that, maybe a Trump threat, so China absent. I think it's a gossip. In fact, China has never been afraid of the U.S. tariff threat. On the contrary, it is the U.S. that is afraid of China and begs to negotiate with China. Some gossip think about that the political reason or the domestic reason. I think they are all rumor. Now China economy grows, recovered very quickly, and now more and more Chinese people they has a more confidence on China's future. I think that the reason I think is very simple. That is, President Xi visited Brazil last year. So this year, he let Chinese Premier Li Qiang attend the BRICS Summit. I think this is very normal. Remember the 2 years ago in India, the India G20 Summit, President Xi it was not there, and also sent the Premier Li Qiang to attend the India G20 Summit. I think this is all very normal. So now we think that last year Chinese Premier Li Qiang attended the BRICS Summit, as I said, which still represents China's emphasis on the BRICS mechanism. So I think one sentence: don't over speculate about President Xi's absence.
Professor Wen, you are saying don't over speculate. But here's a report that I'd like to quote. And the report is, of course, referring to the protests which might be on the rise in China in the aftermath of tariffs. And I will talk about tariffs specifically a little later, but let me just quote some key things which were mentioned in this report. The report is, of course, by Freedom House's China Dissent Monitor. And it goes on to say that the number of economic protests is drastically rising in China, especially after US President Donald Trump set up a trade war with the world's second largest economy.
I'm wondering why you often quote those fake news. I'm wondering how long.
So you're saying there are no protests of any kind going anywhere at any manufacturing plant which might have been at the receiving end of Donald Trump's tariffs? There is nothing of that sort happening anywhere in China?
No, I guarantee. Trust me, in China, no any so-called strike or any anti-government movement happened now in China. China now, as I said, the economic growth very stable, and our economic recover it has more and more power, and also more and more Chinese people they has a very strong confidence on our country's future. I think this is all the reality. So, as a Chinese scholar, I just want to share the real phenomena and the real reality to my India friends. Don't trust those fake news. I think the only way to understand and observe China reality is that come to China. Welcome every India friend to China. Just have a look and observe in China. You can see that this country has a very good, very nice future, and you will like the country indeed.
I'd be happy to visit China. I mean, it seems like a lovely place, of course.
Thank you.
All the videos that we see of various areas, whether it is the desert areas or, of course, the
Yeah.
Tibetan region, or and other areas. So they all look very beautiful, and of course, I'd like to visit them at some point in time. But having said that, as a journalist, would I be free to travel to Xinjiang, for that matter, and report from there independently? Would I be allowed to do that?
Of course. Xinjiang is very beautiful. I have been in Xinjiang more than 20 times. Even this summer, I'm planned to bring my children to Xinjiang again. And also, Xinjiang welcome every foreign friends. But I admit that in the maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a lot of Western media, they demonize Xinjiang and describe a very black, very dirty, very terrible Xinjiang. I think that is all rumor, all fake news. So I think nowadays, if you come to Xinjiang, if you come to China, I guarantee they are welcome every foreign country. So this is real reality. And also you mentioned about Tibet, but nowadays maybe Tibet is a little bit uncomfortable. not because of political issues, but also the altitude. Because in Tibet,
I'm fine
there
with,
was
believe
so
you me,
high
Professor.
mountain.
Believe you me, Professor, I'm absolutely fine with altitude. The highest that I've gone is 19,000 plus feet. So
Oh,
as far
really?
as altitude is concerned, that's not a problem at all, because that number, that altitude is higher than the Everest base camp. So believe you
Okay,
me,
so
if given a chance, I'd love to visit Tibet and report from there independently.
so welcome you. If you are in Beijing or come to China, I can coordinate. Maybe I can accompany with you to Tibet again. I have been in Tibet for more than maybe about five times. So I think this is a very amazing, mysterious place. So I love Tibet very much. So also I like to accompany with India friend to visit Tibet again.
So, Professor Wen, the reason I asked you that question, if I'd be allowed to report from inside China independently, is because just in 2020, 18 journalists, from various publications, including New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal, were expelled, and several others were denied visa renewals. This happened just in 2020, just 5 years ago. Then, of course, foreign journalists, as we all know, those numbers are also out there, are stopped from reporting from regions like Xinjiang because, of course, of what might be happening there. And again, that is, there is some evidence of what is happening for it, but you're making it sound as if all of those reports and all of those instances, all of those things did not happen.
I think it's very normal because as even India government will do such a policy against those fake news journalists. Even if you read the Western media, a lot of Western media, they even demonize India, which led the India government dislike those media, those journalists. As I mentioned that in the past 10 or past 20 years, there are a lot of the Western media journalists, they demonize Xinjiang. They publish so many negative news about Xinjiang, about China. And on the other hand, that is since 2018, President Trump 1.0 term launched a trade war, high-tech war, even a visa war to China. And U.S. government canceled a lot of Chinese journalists and scholars' visa. So as a countermeasure, China did such a policy against Western journalists, especially the U.S. Media journalists. They can China government cancel their visa. I think this is a very normal. It's a normal policy against those bad persons. So I think this is a basic power and a basic right as a sovereignty states. So this is a mutual countermeasure. So I think, please, my India friends, we has a mutual respect. Imagine if a lot of Western media, they often criticize India, often demonize India. I believe that India government will have such a policy.
All right. For a bit, let's not talk about Western media. Let's talk about Indian media, because you said Indian friends are welcome to come to China and report from there. 2023, Anshuman Mishra of Prasar Bharati and Anand Krishnan of The Hindu were informed that their visas will not be renewed. And KJM Verma, who was the last Indian journalist in China of Press Trust of India, was asked to leave Beijing by the end of the month. So this is Indian journalists now. We're not talking about Western media, Wall Street Journal, or New York Times anymore.
Yes, I feel very regret and feel very pity about our two country relationship. Not only the journalist relationship, but also, there are no direct flights between China and India, and the Chinese companies are investing less and less in India, and there are almost no India company investing in China. I think I feel very disappointed about our two bilateral relationship, and there is also a very little personnel exchange between China and India. I have twice lunch opportunity face by face with your ambassador in Beijing, and I applied the India visa. And before the 2020, I have been in India 3 times. I love India very much, and I said that China and India should learn each other. But after I applied twice to India ambassador in India embassy in Beijing, but I felt even for me, I have no any time to no any opportunity to visit India again. I think it's a very pity for me, and also very regret to our bilateral relationship. In terms of my understanding that in India there are no any Chinese journalists, I think this is a very unnormal for two great countries with
Whose
a
fault is
total
that, Professor?
population of nearly 3 billion. So I think I hope that both China and India need to reflect.
Those things which you were talking about, which are missing in the bilateral exchange between India and China, whose fault is that?
This is very complicated, I think. Even
Sure, please go ahead, take your time.
Yeah, I think this is very, very complicated issues. I think before the 2018, our two country the relationship, recovered gradually. But after 2018 and 2019 of
2019.
2019, the border conflict, our bilateral relationship become worse and worse. This is a very pity. I think our two countries.
Would you say, Professor, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but would you say in that case, because you were saying until 2019, India-China relationship was on a recovery path. But 2019, the border conflict started, which was, of course, started by China. Would you say in that case, China is at fault?
These are very professional issues. I think if we should talking about those issues, we can debate one day, one night, or longer. I think those issues belong to those professional person to debate. We are not inside person. I think those diplomats or security person can discuss about that.
Sorry, Professor, I'm interrupting you again.
I just want to say that China and India, those VVIP person, could be calmed down, and don't let such a very small issues to influence our bilateral relation recovery. Both of us are all very great country. We have a broad future. We need to big vision to do the broad future. And don't let those small issues, such as border issues, to influence our big strategic relationship. So this is our strategy. I hope our friendly India friends can do that way.
Professor, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if Indians will see an act of aggression along India-China border as friendly at all, especially when 18 Jawans, 18 members of the Indian Army die in such an act of aggression, which was, of course, not started by India. But having said that, I don't want to get distracted here. I mean, I have posed all of those questions to you. You have answered that to some extent. And let's just agree to disagree on some of those issues. Moving on, I want to circle back to BRICS. And, of course, the conspicuous by absence, President Xi's absence at the summit, and talk for a little bit about, was it the impact and effect of Donald Trump's, this animosity towards BRICS that he now has been talking about for a while, and of course has talked about tariffs, any country which decides to cooperate with BRICS and is involved with BRICS, Trump has said that he'll be levying a tariff on them as well. So do you think that was perhaps the reason that President Xi Jinping wanted to maintain some distance from BRICS? Did he do it because of that?
No. Actually, I think, as I said, that China has never been afraid of the U.S. tariff threat. Actually, since 2018, China has huge countermeasures to the U.S. Tariff war. And we can see in the past 7 years, China totally won the tariff war. Even you can see that 7 years ago, US side deter the Huawei company. But in the past 7 years, Huawei company didn't die. On the contrary, Huawei's value, developed much bigger than before, right? So even the U.S., use a whole country's power deter a Chinese company. U.S. failed. How about China, a country? So I think that in this tariff war, China has a full confidence, and we think that in terms of the tariff war, U.S. cannot contain China at all, and also in the future, the future reality will be proof that the tariff war is tremendously terrible, bad things, and the tariff war will hurt U.S. itself. And also in the future, we can see that China will win the tariff war, and also in the coming 10 years, China's GDP will surpass United States and become the #1 economy in the future, in 10 years.
However,
so
the
this
growth
is our
rate,
confidence. This is our
you're saying
confidence.
that, and I wish you all the best and your country. But you're saying that while the growth rate has come down, it was supposed to be 5.4% for this year, but after the slowdown, it is being projected that the growth will perhaps come down to 4.5 to 4.7%.
I think it's very normal because China, the existing value is very, very big. Even for India, maybe in the future, India's economic growth will fall down again. Now you have the 6, 7, or 8% economic growth every year, but your value is very small. Your India's value is only 1/5 of China's GDP value. So that's a very easy math calculation. So your economic growth are very big, 8%, even 9%. I think this is very normal. As long as your value become bigger, and your economic growth rate will be slowed down. But even that, China have the 5% economic growth, but every year the adding value of the GDP is equal to Turkey total value, or even every 3 years, China's adding GDP value is equal to UK total GDP value annually. So I think this is a very easy calculation. So that's why my confidence is that even in the past, in the coming 10 years, China can keep the 5% or even 4.5% or even 4% in the coming 10 years. It is sure that China would be surpass United States as a #1 economy in 2035.
Sure. While you say that, there is a World Bank report which suggests that the growth in GDP and the numbers there are not connected to job growth, which means, yes, of course, your economy is growing. It is growing in size. And as you mentioned, that perhaps you're adding, GDP worth in just 3 years of the entire GDP of UK. You're growing by that much every 3 years. So that is understandable, given, of course, the size of Chinese economy. But the connection between new jobs which need to be created for the Chinese youth and the GDP growth number, that connection is weak.
Yeah, of course. We, as a think tank scholar, we think about our country very much. And even our government always admit that the GDP is slow down. It's a big pressure. But even that, you look at China's social stability and social development are still very normal, very stable, very sustainable. You look at China's EV car, you look at China AI development. I don't know whether you use DeepSeek. And I think these are all very obvious development phenomena. And look at China, the high-tech development, right? We have a lot of the AI innovation, and look at China's high-speed railway and high-speedway, and look at China's airspace, and also look at the expectations of the 2030. China person will land the moon. I think every phenomena can prove that don't trust those Western media's fake news, and also don't
This is worldwide. This is not Western
don't
media.
only focus on those numbers. Simply look at the whole phenomena of China development. I think you can see the real China development.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Since we have so much to cover, I mean, I'd love to debate this. In fact, I did not want to stop when we stopped discussing press freedom and journalists' ability to report from inside China. I did not want to stop there. But so there's so many topics to cover, I'll quickly move to the next one. And the next one, of course, is SCO. I mean, we all saw that SCO joint statement was not signed by India because China refused to incorporate name of Pakistan and, of course, mention of Pahalgam terrorist attack in the joint statement, after which, of course, India refused to sign that statement and no joint statement was issued. Some are saying China is perhaps being soft towards, states which are terror sympathizers, and in this case, specifically Pakistan.
How to say about the terrorism issues? These are all very complicated issue. But I have to say that Pakistan and China relationship is like a brother relationship. India know it very much. So even that China side hope to have a good relationship with India. So that's why I accept the interview with you. I just let India friends to calm down and to analyze the complicated issues among China, India, Pakistan. I think one common target for us is very obvious. That is promote our own national rejuvenation. So that's our common interest. If India can be become a much stronger power, I think the Chinese will very like to see it, because India and China are all very ancient Eastern civilization. We respect India, and also in the ancient times, we learn a lot from India. So in the future, if India and China can rise up simultaneously, and I think this is our common happiness themes. And in the 100 years ago, even 80 years ago, India is a colony, and 100 years ago, China was invaded by the Western country. So now we become the sovereignty power. Now we rise up simultaneously. I think this is all very good things. Don't let those Western countries love us. When India and China, we quarrel, we struggle,
Professor,
we have confidence.
Professor, the reason
Those
for that is
Western
simple.
people will love it. Will feel very happy. Remember it.
India would absolutely be happy to, perhaps. And the reason for that is perhaps not West. It is perhaps what China decided to do in 2019. You alluded to it yourself. Now, you may have a different version of why it was started and why China did what it had to do, so on and so forth. But having said that, fact of the matter is, the conflict was started by China, and that's not the only one. You, of course, have, along the India's border with Bhutan, and where the borders of three countries meet, China has also had excursions and incursions there made into Indian territory. So the point that I'm trying to make is West may have had a role to play in pitting one country against another in different parts of the world, perhaps including even India and China. But as far as the this bad blood between India and China is concerned, perhaps to a great extent, China is responsible for it, whether it was in the 60s or in 2019. So there is some time, and there are a lot of effort and a lot of gestures from Chinese side which will be required for this to perhaps go away. Wouldn't you agree?
As I said, about border conflict. That is very professional issues. Both of us has no enough knowledge and information to judge about it. So you often
We
mentioned
do,
that
Professor,
China
all of that,
invade
whatever
India
happened,
or India
at least
invade
on the Indian
China.
side,
I think that are
is
all wrong
out there in the
emotions.
open. It is public knowledge. It's been very widely reported, been covered by international media. And if you don't believe international media, Western media, which is probably, as per you, trying to drive a wedge between India and China, then listen to Indian media, because that was also very widely reported by the Indian media as well.
I think if you want to debate with me about the border conflict, you will influence the key point you want to interview with me. You just want to know a Chinese scholar's opinion about the BRICS, about China's
Yes.
policy. But you now often focus on the border conflict. I think this is a wrong direction that will influence your job. I think this is the same logic for our two countries relationship. Our two country relationship has a much wider cooperation fields to do. So don't let the border conflict influence our much wider cooperation. So I think that's what I said. The border conflict is very, very professional issues. Let
Professor,
those professional to judge that, and let
the
us
last
just
point,
do our own cooperation issue. Just focus on our cooperation. Now I accept your interview. That's our cooperation. So if you always do that, debate those border conflict, so that will broken our cooperation. You know what I mean.
Professor Wen, as far whether it is trade or it is cooperation on any other front is concerned, nothing happens in isolation. India is a country. If its very sovereignty is threatened by somebody, that will automatically be discussed as well. So on one hand, you can't expect India to discuss just trade and not mention border conflict at all, and have all of this go on simultaneously. So the point, very limited point, and as far as this conversation is concerned, that I'm trying to make to you is that there is a lot that China will perhaps have to do to win the trust that was lost in 2019. Having said that, the last few points that I'll also want your comment on, and I'm moving to those and leaving this debate unsettled for the time being, and we'll probably have this conversation again at some point in time, is, of course, the question about Dalai Lama. And he recently said, just before his 90th birthday, a couple of days before that, his birthday was on 6th of July, and he said that the succession would be decided upon by him, and of course the trust which he founded while he'd been staying in India after moving to India in 1959. And shortly after, China issued an official statement and said that this will be done by a method which was used last in the 18th century during the Qing dynasty, wherein names of a few candidates will be thrown in an urn, in a golden urn, and one chit will be drawn, and whosoever's name appears on that list will be appointed the Dalai Lama. I just want to get your thoughts first on that. What do you think of the Chinese position and what the Dalai Lama said? And then perhaps I'll have a couple of follow-ups for you.
China's policy is very obvious that Tibet is our own issues. Don't intervene China's sovereignty. Tibet is naturally one part of China. So Dalai Lama is a bad person. Dalai Lama want to separate China. I think this is obvious. Yes.
A man who's non-violent,
he's a
living
bad person.
in the mountains somewhere
He's
in
a bad
India.
person. He's a separatist. In China, in China government, in China law, he broken the China's law, and also he broken the China's unification. I think this is all very obvious. So in India, use the Dalai Lama, play the Dalai Lama card. I think this is very dangerous. Remember it. And as in sum, China respect India, and let's do much wider issues. Don't let the border conflict or the Dalai Lama issues influence our two smart and great countries.
So basically anything which is important for India, Professor, so basically anything which the Indians consider important should not be on the table for discussion, because that is just a distraction. Only what China considers important should be discussed. For example, just a few days ago, China also banned the export of rare earth magnets to India, fertilizer, and tunnel drilling machines. Now, I, in fact, am in favor of that, because this will mean that India will end up putting all of these instruments together, fertilizers together, and perhaps we'll have our own capacity to produce it based on the amount that we need, and perhaps even for export. So there I have no issues with China. But fact of the matter is, to every single thing which I've mentioned, which might be important for India, your response is, let's not get distracted by those issues. Let's discuss what's important for China. Now, what is important for China? Trade, of course, wherein India and China have a massive deficit. And the deficit is in favor of China, which means the trade imbalance between India and China is in favor of China. That is all that needs to be discussed. Everything else perhaps needs to be pushed away, brushed under the carpet, and we can move on from those topics.
One point I agree with you very obviously. That is a deficit. Why you have the deficit? Because China's manufacturing is much stronger than India. So your mission is that development India very quickly, much stronger than before. So I have been in India 3 times. I know India have very few high-speed railway, very few high-speed way, very few subway. India's infrastructure are very bad, but even that, I still have very full confidence on India's future. So let's do it. India need China's help, and of course, China needed India's cooperation. So nowadays, it's very obvious that let's show our friendly to each other. Don't let those small issues influence our cooperation and friendship. This is very important. So let's do those bigger issues and stand together, smile each other, and show our friendship. That will be solve those sensitive issues gradually. I still think and trust that China and India, we should have a much better friendship and relationship. So if that, both of us will have more interest, more much better future. That's my opinion. That's why I accept your interview. Just want to show my friendship to my Indian friends.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the request, Professor, of course. And thank you for talking to us about all of those issues. But what's interesting is, even in this response, wherein I specifically mentioned that China only wants to discuss what's of interest to China and nothing that India says is important for India, even in this particular response of yours, you talked about trade, but you did not talk about the other issues that I mentioned. We'll leave it there. On that note, I mean, that's all the time that we have. So I'd like to thank you. And thank you so much for taking all of those questions. I'm sure quite a few of them were uncomfortable for you to answer, but you did stay and you did try and answer to the extent that you could and say as much as you could. You are, of course, in China. But on that note, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.